My friends at Easy Cater are workplace catering pros, helping you find food for everything from daily employee meals to staff meetings and special events. Visit easycater.com/leaderassistant to find out more.
Hi, this is Melissa Peoples. Today's leadership quote is from Irene Petrick. When you finally get your seat at the table, make sure you actually have something to say.
The Leader Assistant podcast exists to encourage and challenge assistants to become irreplaceable, game-changing leader assistants.
Melissa Peoples is a certified Microsoft trainer with over 25 years of experience supporting C-suite level executives in companies such as National Instruments, Dell, General Motors, The Ohio State University, AllState, and Eli Lilly. In 2013, Melissa shifted her career focus to training and educating other administrative professionals in the art of developing strategic partnerships. Because she is a passionate advocate for professional assistance and has a strong belief in evangelizing the evolution of the profession, Melissa uses her expertise in tools, technologies, meeting management, virtual collaboration, connecting remote and global teams, and problem solving to teach others in her field how to be faster and more productive. I'm very excited to have Melissa on today's show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Leader Assistant Podcast. I'm super excited to have Melissa Peoples with me tonight. Hi, Melissa.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. And we're going to talk a little bit, address a couple topics, and then we're going to do a fun little experiment where we do a lightning round at the end where I ask you a bunch of questions and you give me short, brief answers and see how many questions we can get through. So to start off, why don't you tell me how long you've been an assistant, how many years you've been an assistant, and then what companies have you been an assistant at?
Oh, wow. So I've been in the industry now for 25 years, clearly started when I was 5. So I have worked a gamut across high tech and across education. So I worked at companies like Dell, National Instruments, Eli Lilly, the Ohio State University, General Motors. So I have a wide range, which I'm really grateful for.
That's awesome. I did not know you were at the Ohio State University. My wife's parents met there. And my father-in-law is in the Ohio State Hockey Hall of Fame. So
oh, that's so awesome.
That's crazy.
I love it.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Why did you become an EA, and what did you love about the role?
Wow. So I got into the profession when I was 18. I was a teenage mom, and I got my first job at 18 as a receptionist. And I had no idea that I would be doing this. Wow, I just gave everybody my age.
You said you were 5 earlier. It's changing.
And so I had a really interesting experience that really propelled me in my career. And I just started this role. I was working at a law firm as a receptionist, and the manager came out and said in front of a room full of people, Melissa, you need to get down on the floor and see if there's gum. I think that's gum on the floor. And you need to get on your knees and figure out what it is. And I thought, I was 18, I was really young, but I knew I never wanted anybody to ever talk to me like that ever again. And so for me, that really propelled me in my role to, kind of crush it, kind of shove it in her face. So that started my progression way back in the day. And I just found that I really enjoyed really kind of working around all of the issues and the problems and being that person who could find a solution. I really enjoy problem solving and process improvement. And so I really found that I enjoyed being that go-to person and figuring it out. And I just, worked my way up from being that receptionist to all the way up to supporting CEOs. So, that's a little bit of my story.
Awesome. Do you have any crazy stories from that exciting career as an assistant?
Oh, wow. Probably none that I can share. I think probably the craziest the most insulting, I think, might be the craziest. But I once had this executive was really mad at me because somebody had ate a cookie that she felt like it was hers. And so she threw a stack of papers in my face. I think that's probably like the craziest, like I almost had to come to Jesus moment.
Wow. That is a little crazy.
Yeah. That was full on like crazy psycho moment. Yeah. That was probably the craziest that anybody's ever treated me. All the other stories have to stay in the closet because I can't really say those.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So tell me a little bit about how you got into being a certified Microsoft trainer.
So when I came to Dell, I left Ohio. I was each one of my family had moved from Columbus to Austin, Texas. So I was the last one to move, and I got a job at Dell, and I was super excited. I was a big techie, and I was thrilled to be working in a technology space. And when I got there, I realized that there was a pretty big technology gap for the admins, and I wanted to reach out and kind of share, as most of us do. We want to share our information and kind of bring each other up in the profession. And so I suggested that we do a 2.5-day training session, and they looked at me like, oh, that's crazy. You're the new girl. And then I just really pushed hard. So we did it. And then the following year, we had Vicky Sokol-Evans and Vanilla Craven came in, and they saw me teach, and they said, hey, have you ever thought about doing this for a career? And I was like, no, that's ridiculous. Like, thank you. But that put a seed in my head about, could that actually be a possibility? And so I went and got my certification and walked, sort of step by step, and then just decided, no, I really love doing this. And I want to train everybody. So kind of worked my way up over the last 6 years now. So
nice.
I'm a techie. What can I say?
So you're a Microsoft techie, and
yes.
I like to consider myself a Mac techie. And a Google techie. Now, I don't have any official certifications, but I do know my way around Google Calendar and a MacBook Pro, which I also, side note, think is the best laptop ever made, the 2015 version, I believe. But we can fight about Dell versus.
We can debate about it later.
Yeah, all that fun stuff. So I am curious though. There's a lot of startup companies or small companies that are on the Google ecosystem.
Yeah.
But I did an informal poll in a Facebook group asking EAs if they used Microsoft or Google, Business or Office Suite. And I think it was like 80%, maybe higher. I can't remember exactly. It was a small sample size, but like 80 or 85%. Were on Microsoft. And so which is fun, is just kind of just eye-opening to me because I've been on a Mac and in Google world for, the last 15 years. And I just I haven't even used my Outlook probably once in my career. So I'm just curious how, you're in Microsoft world, obviously. How is that seen? Is Google seen as like, oh, nobody uses that, or is it really like does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that there's a big shift, right? So I think that a lot of people that have used Mac at home and for personal, for their personal life, I think it works really well. I don't think it translates nearly the same as a Microsoft environment, especially for assistants, because Microsoft intentionally built tools into, all of their applications that are for administrative professionals, and Google just doesn't have the same. So, for example, I can pull a report from my executive to see how much time he's spending in, A, B, and C. All of the quick steps and the rules and the automation that's available is just not available. There are some workarounds, even on, I know people that are on a Mac that use O365, it's still not the same. Mm-hmm. The capability of it is very different. And so I always advocate, I know a lot of administrative professionals love how quickly they can get things done because of the automation that's available in Outlook. And it really is mind-blowing when so success story, I was supporting an executive who was like diehard Mac, and I finally convinced her, after all of these conversations about the productivity that you can have when you're on a PC versus a Mac. And she finally agreed to switch over. But then once she was like, but I need you to get me a cover because I don't want anybody to see that I have a PC. But I do think the productivity is very different. But I also would say there's a lot of, I think companies just need to be more aware of, there's a lot of assistants who love Google and they've never been in an Outlook environment, like you were saying, and you're just not as comfortable. And then you have someone who's been in a Microsoft environment their entire career and they switch over to a Google environment and it's like a night and day. So I think it's something really, people just assume that you can do. You're either, you're great. If you're great with computers, or people say this ridiculous term about being tech savvy, which I don't really love that term, for an assistant. Because I'm like, there's no other job that anyone labels that out. Like nobody says, are you an analyst that's tech savvy? They're like, it just doesn't happen. So I think people just assume that if you're great with one, you're great with the other. And that's not always the case. And so finding the training and technology pieces that are out there for whatever platform you are on are really important, I think.
Yeah. So that's great. Great way to put it. I've kind of come along a little bit in the sense of, okay, if there's that many people using Microsoft, then I, should be a little more open to potentially using it in the future. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday.
Well, one day you are. You let me know, and I'll give you the hookup.
Sounds good. So let's talk about a scenario. Let's talk about for EAs having to run a management team meeting, board meeting, management team meeting, leadership team meeting, whatever you want to call it. Let's say an EA is kind of new to having the responsibilities of whether it's taking meeting minutes, following up with action items, coordinating all that. How would you, maybe quick step-by-step, how would you encourage and empower assistants listening as they are, many of them, myself included, are tasked with kind of overseeing and running and actually running the meetings oftentimes. How would you go about counseling assistants in that?
Yeah, so I'm actually super passionate about this topic because I think that in the industry, we struggle sometimes in finding where do we really drive strategic impact. And I think this is one way that regardless of where you are in an org, that you can really impact the business and being very strategic with meeting management. And so for me, I like to say, especially, 20 years ago, you probably managed the content more than you managed the process. And so back in the day, people would send a slide, different pages on their slide, and we would merge them all together and made a beautiful deck. And we spent a lot of time doing that. But a lot of times people don't need us to do that piece anymore, and they're very capable of building their own deck. And so for me, I think the benefit really is managing the process now and not necessarily always managing the content. And so for me, it really is utilizing a collaborative tool. If you are in the Microsoft environment, you can use Teams, and OneNote absolutely is the go-to piece if you're in the Microsoft environment. If you're in Google, then you can use Google Docs or, just different collaborative tools. Some people use Trello, some people use Slack. I mean, there's all sorts of different collaborative tools out there for you to use. But so let me give you a scenario. This is what used to happen, and this is what I think that we should avoid as administrative professionals. So someone used to say, okay, we're going to have a meeting. Let's just say our weekly staff meeting for this conversation. And the EA would send a note out that says, hey, everybody, I need your agenda items. And then Jeremy might send me an email that says, hey, Melissa, I want to talk about this topic. And maybe you didn't tell me how much time that you needed, or if there was a pre-read, or if, what type of a meeting it was, or, what type of a topic it was. So there's a lot of back and forth. And by the time we get done figuring it out, you and I have exchanged 15 different emails. Versus, having a collaborative space where you have clearly laid out the agenda for the next, let's say, 3 months for the quarter. And when there is an opportunity for an open topic, then Jeremy just goes into the collaborative tool and types in all the information that I've asked for. And then I can manage that process of it versus, having 20 different emails going back and forth. And it really, I think, wastes our time and it's not valuable. Mm-hmm. So I'd say one is make sure you set up a collaborative space. Two, I never schedule meetings unless I know these 5 things. So I have to know what meeting type it is. And when I say type, is it a decision that needs to be made? Is it a problem solving? Is it a brainstorming session? Like, what's the expected outcome? So I ask for the type of the meeting. Should this have a pre-read or not? That way, if people need to consume information and make a decision, they're not making it on the fly. They would have time to consume it, gather their thoughts together and come prepared with an idea versus kind of winging it. I also make sure that there is a meeting purpose. So, 1 to 2 sentences that clearly define what the purpose of the meeting is, and then an agenda. If it's over 30 minutes, I require a very thought out agenda. Like, it can't just say, Jeremy's going to meet with Melissa. Like, not helpful. Like, what are we going to meet about for that hour? And then the last thing is an expected outcome. So even if I'm establishing who's coming in to talk in my staff meetings, like, I ask for all that information. So I know how much time I need to give them. If I need to make sure that there's a pre-read that's sent out, like, all that information allows me to do my job without having to chase and be someone's babysitter, which I think is really important. So it really does require a lot more process than it does necessarily tactical pieces. And I think that's the shift that administrative professionals have to make. So 1, have a collaborative space. 2, kind of get your mind space around the fact that you are going to run this meeting from beginning to end, which is really challenging. I think if you've never done it before, it can be very intimidating. It's really hard for you to, take that step and be willing to look at a room full of executives and tell them when to talk and, when their time is up and when you need to move on. I think some of that can be really, really challenging. But you can absolutely do it. And then I think the other thing too is, it's important to do administrative benchmarking. So if you don't do something like meeting management well, reaching out to those that do and get their best practices and, even like do a mock session so that you can feel comfortable. I think the very first time, I don't know about you, but the very first time that I had to tell an executive that their time was up when we needed to move on, like, that was really intimidating. That wasn't just something that, just I was okay with doing. Like, I had to work myself up to that. But once you do it, it becomes easier. But it's the confidence. I think a lot of times what we miss is that executives are looking to us. And when we become silent in meetings and we don't own it and we, sit against the wall and we literally don't sit at the table, they get to the point where they don't look to us as a trusted partner. And so they start ignoring you and they don't look to you. But when you just decide that you're going to have the confidence to run it and to manage it, they do look to depend on you and ask questions. And they do take your leadership in the meeting. So it's definitely something that I think is evolving in the industry, and it's not always accepted. Not everybody's happy when an admin goes in and crushes the meeting like that. I think sometimes it's a little bit harder, but yeah, I think I don't know, what has been your experience in managing meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it well. When they look to you and you're just kind of like, well, I guess, it doesn't really go well. But that said, I do think there are times when that's happened to me that's kind of, challenged me and kind of made me wake up and say, oh, okay, they do trust me and they do want to trust me. And so, right. I think you put it very well. I think I've done something occasionally, depending on what I'm trying to learn about or what I want to really get in and get to, get the bigger picture on things. I'll say, hey, can I sit in on this meeting? Not because I want more work to do, but just because I want to be aware of what's going on so that as I do the work that I have on my to-do list, I have the context needed to be more efficient and productive.
Right. I think the biggest, probably eye-opening conversation that I had concerning meeting management, I was supporting this executive and, our staff meetings were not going well. And I had taken over, I was new into the role and I had taken over from a previous TA. I was being judged on how the meetings were running, but it wasn't my process. And I would not say that any of them are best practices, but I didn't feel empowered to change it. And so this is a phrase that I use all the time. And I think if you're getting to the point where you're wanting to manage meetings or you'd like an opportunity, I went to him and I basically said, this is a development opportunity that I see. And this is how I would like to, this is how I would like for us to consider changing it. And so then we sat down and I gave him some suggestions, and he was looking for something that was very rigid because it was sort of fluid, and, people really didn't care that there was a deadline. They wouldn't send it in. Or I hated this. People would send things to me like literally 3 seconds before the meeting would start. And then I'm fumbling around looking like the idiot, like I didn't prepare. It was really the other person who, so I was trying to figure out, like, how do I make sure that I'm confidently managing this meeting in a way that I'm okay to be accountable for? Like, it's a process that I'm behind and I'm okay to be accountable for it. And then also letting everybody else know that, this isn't a free for all. And so we came up with some pretty hardcore rules. And now if you attend my meetings, and I've done this ever since, is I set a deadline. So if we have staff meeting every Tuesday, my expectation is that you have uploaded your deck to either Teams or Skype for Business, whatever tool that I'm using, by noon the day before. And if you haven't, then you're automatically off the agenda because the assumption is you're not ready. And so we have conversations with the teams to let them know the expectations so they're not blindsided. And the first time they do it, I let them know. I'll check in with them. But after that, like, the expectation is you're either on it or you're not, which is it's a big change because people aren't used to administrative professionals being so hardcore with things. They're used to us being all friendly and sweet and nice and be like, oh, it's fine that you do that. Like, nobody cares. It doesn't matter that there's 8 executives in the room and they're all expecting this presentation. It's okay. But I think that when you start to develop those kinds of boundaries, people will respond to them. You just have to communicate them and have those conversations, and then they will start to respond.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's transition a little bit to putting yourself out there. This kind of ties in well. So putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and kind of stepping up in those moments, whether it's, hey, there's a deadline, you got to meet this deadline, or, there's those very practical, specific instances. But then talk a little bit about how you've kind of put yourself out there in the sense of getting certified and teaching other assistants and kind of going and speaking and doing a YouTube channel and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, and maybe having to deal with some trolls here and there. Talk about that a little bit and how you've done that, and then just what you would say to those that are very hesitant or afraid or nervous or anxious, like most of us are, to really be vulnerable and try to, even within work, within the job and within your office, but also outside your office.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you bring it up because it's definitely one of those things that is really difficult for administrative professionals specific to our function because there's this history behind us where we are not always valued, and somehow we believe if we know everything and we don't share that with the rest of the administrative team, that people will come to us and they'll value me, which I think is a really challenging mindset to have. And so I think the biggest thing for me is I went into things very naive, I think sometimes, and didn't realize that there was going to be pushback. And I think, like it or not, it shouldn't be this way. But the truth of the matter is that you are going to have to deal with trolls, and you are going to have to deal with people who aren't going to like it that you have a voice or that you found your voice. And I think getting to the point that you're okay with that, I really wanted to help others. So I'll give you an example. So when I was at Dell, I was working with this one assistant, and she was so frustrated because her boss expected her to do an org chart in PowerPoint, and he really wanted the flag of every nation. He had like 1,500 people in his org, and he wanted the flag of every nation. So she was literally creating boxes, right? And she was so frustrated, but didn't feel like she had the voice to kind of say, do you know that this takes me 3 days to do this the way that you want to? And so for me, that frustrated me for her. I wanted to help her. I wanted her not to feel that way. And, I'm a pastor's kid, so I just kind of have like this compassion towards other people just naturally, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I was willing to be the person who took time out of the day to have a class that says, let me show you how to import this into Visio. Like, take this tool, import it into Visio, it'll literally take you 5 minutes and you're done. And then have the conversation that says with him, hey, look, this takes me 3 days, or this version takes me 5 minutes. Like, which one do you want? And so for me, I guess I just decided that I wanted to be that person to help someone else. I wanted to be that person to be a solution for some other person. I personally went through a period in my life. My son, when he was very young, he was diagnosed with autism. And at the time, we didn't know kind of what was wrong with him. We knew something was up. We didn't know what it was. And it was really important for me to have a community, because I needed people to help teach me, how can I support a CEO and manage the needs that my son had at the same time. And that was a hard thing for me, but I relied on my community to help me. And so I wanted to be that for somebody else. Now, on the same side, I will say that people will act ugly and people will say things, and, they'll be offended that you have the audacity to speak up in a meeting. Or, just this past weekend, I had like my first like real troll on one of my YouTube videos, and my son said to me, he was like, Mom, don't you just realize that that's like a badge of honor when somebody's trolling you? Because it kind of offended me. I was like, why would they say that? And don't they know that it's hard to put your face on YouTube? Like, it's just kind of one of those moments. But I guess you just have to be okay with being who you are and owning it. And just, you cannot let other people's inability to see your value change whether or not you're willing to be there to help someone else and to be the solution. Just like there's going to be times in your life where you need somebody else to be the solution. So I just always encourage people to be truly supportive of one another. And why can't we all just be amazing rock stars? It doesn't have to be this, I'm better than you are, and I'm more skilled than you are. All of us have different skill sets. Some of us are great writers. Some of us are really great with processes, and some people like kill it at events. I think it's important for all of us to lean on each other so that we can build our profession instead of like fragmenting each other and saying, kind of this competition that's sort of pointless.
Perfect. That's perfect. I'm a preacher's kid as well, so I can relate. PKs. I'm actually a homeschooled preacher's kid, so
all right.
You can take that as you will. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much. We're gonna kind of shift into the lightning round.
All right.
I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You can answer quickly, and we'll see how far we get.
Alrighty.
So until we run out of breath, I guess, or the recording stops, or my hard drive runs out of space, something like that.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So what was your very first job?
Receptionist.
What do you hate about the role of an assistant?
That we don't have a seat at the table.
Describe a time when you saved the day.
But I teach anyone how to use OneNote.
Okay, nice. What's the biggest mistake you've made as an assistant, and what did you learn from the experience?
Oh my gosh, you're going to seriously make me say this. Literally one time I almost skipped the whole part about scheduling the airfare for my executive for the night before. I learned never to let somebody interrupt me while I was making travel arrangements.
There you go. That's a good lesson. What's the biggest challenge that you hear others have, or that you even have, related to being an assistant?
I think educating other people about what we actually do, rather than what they think we do.
Awesome. Describe the job of an assistant in one sentence.
Be a force multiplier.
If someone told you they were considering becoming an assistant, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that nobody is going to ask you to have a seat at the table, so get your own chair, pull it up to the table, and get to work.
Nice. And what's one thing you would tell someone who's about to start their very first EA job?
I would say don't let anyone else undermine the work that you do. Understand that you're valuable, that you're important, and that you drive strategic business impact.
What should executives look for in an assistant?
Oh my gosh, this could take me all day. I think executives should look for what they value. So if you're an executive and you value an activator, don't partner with a strategist. That doesn't work. So find what you value in an EA rather than, just assuming that all EAs are the same and we all have the same strengths.
That's great. I'm actually going to pause because I want to dig into this a little bit. So my boss and I actually have been having this conversation lately, and we noticed how we are very different personalities. We've kind of known that for a while. He's an extrovert, high extrovert. I'm an introvert. He's an intuitive on the Myers-Briggs, and I'm a sensor. And anyway, we're just like on the opposite spectrums when it comes to the personality types. But when it comes to what we value, things like hard work and persistence and low ego, et cetera, we're almost in complete alignment. And so We've just kind of noticed how, it's not that we are looking for an assistant or I'm looking for an executive who's exactly like me. It's that we're looking to find somebody that has the same values. So you said it spot on.
Yeah, I think it's really, because even the point of knowing their communication style. So for example, for me, I'm not someone who feels like if I get an email, I'm not the kind of person that feels like I immediately have to respond in 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. And there are people who feel that way. So we don't partner well together because that's not how I give or receive information. And so someone who has like serious FOMO, I don't partner well with them. So if that's something that you highly value is like the immediate response with like no thought or the fact that I'm in another meeting or doing any of that, like just know that that's probably not going to be a great fit. And that's okay, right? Like be okay with it and move on.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's keep going then. Rapid fire, a couple more.
Right.
What do you wish executives would do differently when working with their assistants?
I wish they would stop limiting them in their role.
And then what's one tip you would give executives to help them get more out of their assistant or to help them not limit their role?
I would say be teachable. It can't be a one-way street. So let the assistant teach you how to use them better.
Nice. What are some things you've seen assistants do really well?
Oh my gosh, run the world.
That's a good answer. That's a good short answer. What do you wish assistants would do differently?
Stop the drama.
What's one productivity hack? I know you're the Microsoft productivity world, but what's one productivity hack you can't live without?
So I'm guessing you're going to say like the entire Microsoft environment, but I guess I'm going to go, I can't probably live without my quick steps in Outlook.
Okay, good.
Or OneNote, both of them. I can't.
OneNote.
Can't make me choose.
Yeah. What makes someone a leader?
Oh my gosh. I think I would say that a leader is someone who can inspire and reach others to row in the same direction, like regardless of what your title is.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks, Melissa. This is awesome. You did a great job on the my first ever rapid fire lightning round.
Love it.
So where can we find you online, and how can my listeners support what you're up to?
So you can find me on my website, which is melissapeebles.com. I have a YouTube channel where we really kind of focus on, we kind of have 2 pieces, which is professional development and then technology training. Try to keep them short so they're easy for you to consume and move on. And that is, you can find me on YouTube at Admin Gurus. And then I'm very active on LinkedIn. And if you go to my website, we've got some conferences that are coming up, so you can join us and meet up with us there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Melissa. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share your wisdom with the listeners of the Leader Assistant Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for listening to episode 13 of the Leader Assistant Podcast. You can check out today's show notes at leaderassistant.com/13. Be sure to connect with Melissa on LinkedIn and on our website, and I'll include all of those links in the show notes. Until next time, see you later.
Help my dad out and leave a review on iTunes. GoBulls.com